Dr. John Pohl spent 13 years as the most watched veterinarian in television history, 24 seasons, millions of fans across every continent who tuned in every Saturday night not for drama, but for the opposite of drama, a man who simply showed up and did the work. Then the news started coming, not the kind that celebrates a legacy, the kind that raises questions nobody expected to be asking about a man this beloved. Subscribe and stay until the very end, because the full story is more complicated than any headline. Jan Pohl was not built for television. He was built for barns, for frozen fields in January, for the specific and unglamorous work of keeping farm animals alive in rural Michigan, when the weather is bad and the equipment is failing and the farmer standing beside you is calculating whether the cost of saving the animal is going to exceed the cost of losing it. He was built for that work the way that people who find their calling at 12 years old and never deviate from it are built for things, completely, without reservation, and with the specific quality of competence that only decades of sustained practice at the same discipline in the same environment can produce. His son Charles filmed a demo DVD and pitched it to Nat Geo Wild without telling his father it was going to change everything. Jan Pohl agreed to do the show because his son asked him, not because he wanted to be famous, not because he had anything to prove, because the son asked and the father said yes, and that was the whole negotiation. What the cameras found when they showed up at Pohl Veterinary Services on West Jordan Road in Weidman, Michigan was not a performer waiting for his moment. It was a 69-year-old Dutch veterinarian who walked into barns the same way he had been walking into barns for 50 years, directly, without ceremony, and with his attention on the animal rather than on anything else in the room. Audiences sensed the absence of performance immediately and responded to it with a loyalty that the network had not predicted and could not fully explain. By season 7, a single premiere drew 1.1 million viewers, the biggest audience in Nat Geo Wild history at the time, up 52% from the year before. By season 10, the 100th episode drew over 3 million total unique viewers, and the season averaged nearly 1.4 million per episode. The network's own executive vice president called it must-see family television. None of that happened because Jan Pohl knew how to work a camera. It happened because he did not know how to work a camera and did not particularly want to learn. The authenticity that produced 13 years of Saturday night viewership was never a strategy. It was just the man. Which makes what has been happening around him in the years since the camera stopped rolling all the more complicated to sit with. Because the news breaking around Jan Pohl right now is not the kind that celebrates what he built. It is the kind that raises questions about what the building cost and what the full accounting of those costs looks like when you add everything up. The Incredible Dr. Pohl ended on July 6, 2024, 24 seasons, approximately 248 episodes, 13 years of Saturday nights. The series finale aired with almost no fanfare, no retrospective special, no formal farewell programming, no network statement explaining the decision that ended the longest-running veterinary documentary in American television history. National Geographic confirmed the cancellation on June 21, 2024. 15 days later, the finale aired. The specific brevity of that window between announcement and conclusion communicates something about the character of the decision that produced it. Not the planned conclusion of a production that had reached its natural endpoint, but the network's determination that the show's commercial viability had declined to a point that justified ending it, regardless of what that ending meant to the people whose lives had been organized around its production. The ratings data supports that determination. By May 2024, the show was drawing approximately 231,000 total viewers. At its peak in 2017, it had averaged nearly 1.4 million per episode. The audience had not disappeared. It had fragmented across the streaming landscape that the cable television model whose economics the show was built around no longer dominated in the way it had when the show premiered in 2011. Multiple long-running Nat Geo Wild shows ended around the same time as part of a programming slate restructuring whose logic was commercial rather than personal. Dr. Pohl's show was not singled out. It was caught in a tide. What makes the cancellation sting differently than most is not the cancellation itself, but the specific quality of Dr. Pohl's public statements about the show's future in the period immediately preceding the announcement. When asked whether the Incredible Pohl Farm, a spin-off following his son Charles and daughter-in-law Beth on their hobby farm that had premiered in January 2024, was meant to replace his show, Dr. Pohl was unambiguous. No, he said. I love doing the show because what we hear from people is how they learn how to take care of animals. This is so important. He did not sound like a man who knew the end was coming. He sounded like a man who intended to keep going. The cancellation appears to have been the network's decision rather than a mutual conclusion. And the specific gap between what Dr. Pol was saying publicly about the show's continuation and what the network was apparently deciding privately about its conclusion is the first of the wrong reasons this video documents. The controversies surrounding Dr. Jan Pol have always existed alongside the affection. They were not invented by critics or manufactured by competitors. They are documented in the public records of the Michigan Board of Veterinary Medicine, the regulatory body whose professional oversight function in the veterinary medicine field exists specifically to investigate and adjudicate concerns about the standard of care that licensed veterinarians provide to the animals in their practice. Dr. Pol has faced 3 documented disciplinary proceedings from that board across the course of his career. The first involved a failure to accurately read a canine ultrasound that resulted in stillborn puppies. He paid a $500 fine and completed continuing education as required by the board's finding. The second case was initiated by a Kentucky veterinarian who watched an episode of The Incredible Dr. Pol and filed a complaint about what he observed on screen regarding the treatment of a dog. That case resulted in a $500 fine and a period of probation, a finding that Dr. Pol's legal team appealed. The Michigan Court of Appeals reversed the ruling entirely in June 2016, characterizing the board's original decision as arbitrary and capricious, and noting that the dog had survived, that the owner had established a $300 budget for treatment, and that no credible evidence existed that the standard of care had been breached. A third proceeding in the late 2000s, related to 2 separate cases, resulted in another probationary period whose specific terms the board's records document. His attorney's position across all 3 proceedings was consistent. The board makes arbitrary decisions, and the record shows Dr. Pol's care was competent. Fellow veterinarians watching the show have raised ongoing concerns that the disciplinary proceedings formalize the absence of full sterile surgical attire in some procedures, questions about monitoring protocols during field treatments, the specific gap between the conditions of a clinical surgical environment and the conditions of a barn in Michigan in January that the show documents without always fully contextualizing for an audience whose veterinary knowledge is limited. Dr. Pol's response to all of it has never changed. He treats animals the way rural farming communities need them treated, practically, affordably, and with the common sense that 50 years of experience in exactly this environment generate. That response is not a dismissal of professional standards. It is the position of a man who has spent half a century doing the actual work in the actual conditions that the complaints and the board proceedings engage with from a distance. The Pol family's experience across the later seasons of The Incredible Dr. Pol contains a thread of grief whose specific weight the show's format handled with a dignity and a restraint that the entertainment industry does not consistently produce when it encounters genuine human loss in the middle of a production. It would have been possible, it would have been commercially rational, to make the grief part of the show's narrative in the explicit, camera-facing way that the reality television format typically deploys when the people it documents experience significant personal loss. The Pol family did not do that. The grief was absorbed quietly, and the work continued, and the cameras kept rolling around the edges of it without making it the center. Jan and Diane Pol have 3 adopted children. Their daughter Kathy's story, though she shared almost none of it publicly, is the thread that runs heaviest through the show's later years. In 2016, her husband, Gregory Butch, died at age 50 after a long battle with cancer. The family grieved privately and kept coming to work. 3 years later, the unthinkable happened again. On September 18th, 2019, Kathy's son, Adam James Butch, was found dead at his home. He was 23 years old. He had appeared in 1 episode of the show in 2017. He had graduated from All Saints High School in Bay City, Michigan, with National Honor Society recognition. He had attended Michigan State University. He had just started a new job as a certified pharmacy technician at Rite Aid. 2 days before he died, he had started that job. The cause of death was never publicly disclosed. The family asked for privacy, and the production honored that request. Dr. Pol and Diane had lost their son-in-law and their grandson within 3 years of each other. They kept coming to work. 1 month after Adam died, Charles and his wife Beth welcomed a daughter, Abigail, born October 19, 2019. A granddaughter arrived into the arms of a family still carrying fresh grief. That is how the later seasons of The Incredible Dr. Pol were actually experienced by the people making them, and the specific grace with which the family carried that weight while continuing to produce content whose warmth and whose genuine quality never visibly deteriorated under the pressure of what they were absorbing is one of the least discussed and most significant things about the show's complete record. Dr. Emily Emily Thomas joined Paul Veterinary Services in 2014 as a young veterinarian whose on-screen development across 95 episodes of the incredible Dr. Pol became one of the show's most beloved narrative threads. Fans watched her grow from a nervous new hire into a confident and capable veterinarian whose relationship to Dr. Pol's mentorship and to the specific demands of the clinic's practice gave the show a generational dimension that the original format had not anticipated, and that the audience responded to with the specific loyalty that genuine character development across years of television produces. Then she was gone. Her last appearance was in Season 15, Episode 10, which aired September 21st, 2019. She was absent from Season 16 onward, without any on-screen acknowledgement of the departure. Fans noticed immediately, and the show never fully replaced what her presence had provided. Emily Thomas eventually addressed the departure herself on her personal blog with a candor that the show's format had never produced about the specific operational realities of working at Paul Veterinary Services. She wrote that the stress of working there with 3 small children being on call all the time, new veterinarians coming and leaving as fast as they arrived, leaving the on-call duties spread between mostly 2 or 3 people with no additional compensation, it had become too much. She said she did not miss the chaos the clinic brought into her family's life, but that she did miss the people, both clients and co-workers. She relocated to Virginia's Shenandoah Valley and joined a practice there. Her account of the departure provides the most direct public characterization of the operational environment at Paul Veterinary Services from someone who worked there. And what it characterizes is an environment whose demands exceed what sustainable employment in the relevant professional context can typically absorb. New veterinarians coming and leaving as fast as they arrive. On-call duties concentrated among 2 or 3 people without additional compensation. The specific combination of operational pressures that produces the kind of staff turnover that Emily Thomas's departure was part of, and that her account contextualizes for the first time in direct public terms. That characterization does not diminish what Dr. Pol built, or what his individual contributions to veterinary medicine and to the communities he serves represent. It provides a dimension of the clinic's complete story that the show's celebration of his approach had not previously offered. The specific vulnerability that an audience of millions develops toward a public figure they have watched every week for 13 years produces a specific kind of online content ecosystem in the period following that figure's reduced public visibility. An ecosystem whose commercial logic the algorithm rewards regardless of whether the content it produces is accurate. The health rumors that have circulated about Dr. John Pol in the years since the incredible Dr. Pol's cancellation are the most visible expression of that ecosystem and the most directly harmful to the public's ability to understand what is actually happening with a man whose well-being millions of people genuinely care about. Multiple websites have claimed to reveal dramatic diagnoses. Multiple YouTube channels have produced videos whose titles promise devastating health updates and whose content delivers speculation assembled from publicly available images, and the specific interpretive flexibility that concern for a beloved public figure generates in people who have been watching him age across 13 years of weekly television. The actual record is different from what those videos describe. What the public record establishes about Dr. Pol's health in the period since the show's cancellation is this. In 2018 and 2019, he underwent ankle replacement surgery to address severe arthritis accumulated across decades of rough terrain and heavy lifting. His son Charles described the aftermath in terms that are the most direct available characterization of Dr. Pol's post-surgical condition from someone in a position to observe it directly. He started slowing down a couple of years ago with his ankle and decided to get the surgery, and ever since then it has been a revitalized Dr. Pol. It gave him another spring to his step. In May 2025, at age 82, Dr. Pol appeared at the Zoomark trade show in Bologna, Italy to launch his pet food line into European markets. A man who cannot get out of bed does not fly to Italy for a trade show. The rumors about Diane Pol are similarly disconnected from the actual record. Multiple websites have claimed she was diagnosed with cancer in 2017 or died in 2022. Neither claim is accurate. Diane, who turned 82 in February 2025, continues to work as the clinic's office manager, appears on the family podcast, and is active on their social media accounts. Her reduced on-camera presence in the show's later seasons reflected a back surgery in 2018 rather than any more alarming health development. The period following the incredible Dr. Pol's cancellation has not produced in Jan Pol the retirement that the entertainment industry's standard narrative about the conclusion of a 13-year television career might predict. What it has produced is an expansion, the specific kind of expansion that a person builds when they have a platform whose commercial potential the television format was only one expression of, and whose continuation the television format's conclusion does not end. Through Doach Brands LLC, a family business entity whose name combines Doc and Son, Dr. Pol and his son Charles have built a product line whose commercial reach exceeds what the show's domestic cable television audience could have independently supported. The Dr. Pol branded pet food line sells dog food, cat food, farm feeds for poultry, horses, goats and rabbits, cat litter, wild bird products, and additional pet care items available at Walmart, Amazon, and major retailers nationwide. The line won Modern Cat Magazine's Best Wet Cat Food Award in 2024 and Modern Dog Magazine's Best Dry Dog Food Award in the same year. In 2024 and 2025, the family partnered with a Belgian company called Meeten NFY to launch the brand in European markets. Dr. Pol Care, a telehealth veterinary consultation service, offers 24/7 video access to licensed veterinarians for a monthly subscription fee, extending the accessible, affordable veterinary care philosophy that has defined Dr. Pol's practice since the garage days of 1981 into a digital format whose geographic reach the physical clinic in Wademan, Michigan cannot match. There is merchandise, a podcast called the IncrediPolcast, a weekly YouTube channel, a Cameo account, speaking engagements at agricultural events and veterinary conferences. The brand that began in a garage with two people and a philosophy about affordable animal care is now global in a way that the Nat Geo Wild Saturday night audience slot never fully expressed. He still practices veterinary medicine at Pol Veterinary Services. He has scaled back the physically demanding large animal calls, whose specific demands on an 83-year-old body, the practical wisdom of 6 decades in the field, has apparently persuaded him to redirect to the younger veterinarians on staff. But he has not stopped practicing. He sees patients. He consults. He teaches by example the way he has always taught, not through instruction, but through the specific quality of attention he brings to every animal in front of him. The wrong reasons that Dr. John Pol is breaking the news right now, the cancellation whose announcement came without warning and whose network rationale was never publicly explained, the disciplinary proceedings whose documentation the show's popularity has consistently overshadowed, the staff turnover whose specific character a departing colleague's direct account has finally characterized, the health rumors whose commercial success in the algorithm economy bears no relationship to their accuracy, are not the complete story of what is happening around this man in 2026. They are the frame that the specific vulnerabilities of the content ecosystem place around a story whose actual character is more complicated and more worth understanding than any individual wrong reason communicates on its own. The cancellation tells one true thing: that a network's commercial calculation ended a show whose significance to its audience the calculation did not weigh against the ratings decline, whose caused the streaming landscape's fragmentation, rather than any specific failure of the show's quality more accurately explains. The disciplinary proceedings tell one true thing: that the practice of veterinary medicine in the specific conditions that rural farming communities create, and that 50 years of experience in those conditions teaches a practitioner to navigate produces approaches whose distance from clinical best practices in controlled environments is real, and whose adequacy in the conditions it was designed for is also real, and whose full characterization requires holding both of those truths simultaneously rather than resolving the tension between them in either direction. The staff account tells one true thing: that the operational environment of a practice whose demands are as extensive as Pol Veterinary Services has always been is difficult for people whose personal circumstances require the kind of work-life separation that the practice's on-call structure does not consistently permit. And the health rumors tell one true thing whose content is the opposite of what their titles claim: that millions of people care enough about a man they watched on television every week for 13 years to seek information about his well-being, even when the information being provided is not accurate, and the seeking of it funds the production of content that is not interested in accuracy. John Pol is 83 years old. He was born on September 4th, 1942, in a small farming village in the Netherlands, the youngest of 6 children on a dairy farm. He decided at 12 years old that he was going to be a veterinarian. He has not deviated from that decision once in the 7 decades since. He earned his degree from Utrecht University in 1970. He married Diane Driesenga in August 1967 after years of letters crossing the Atlantic, one a month, both ways, Following the year he spent as a foreign exchange student in Michigan, he started Paul Veterinary Services in a garage in Weidman, Michigan in 1981 with his wife and a philosophy about affordable animal care that has never changed. He agreed to do a television show because his son asked him. He appeared in 248 episodes and became the most watched veterinarian in American television history. He lost his son-in-law and his grandson in the same 3-year span and kept coming to work. He had ankle surgery at 76 and came back with more energy than before. He flew to Italy at 82 to launch a pet food line on a new continent. He still practices veterinary medicine in the same clinic on the same road in the same corner of rural Michigan he chose 44 years ago. The wrong reasons Dr. Jan Pol is breaking the news exist. They are documented, they are real, and they are worth understanding fully rather than sentimentally. The cancellation was abrupt. The disciplinary record is part of the complete story. The staff experience communicated something about the clinic's operational demands that the show's warmth did not. The health rumors are false, but their existence reflects a genuine public concern, whose emotional basis 13 years of weekly television fully justifies. And underneath all of it, underneath every wrong reason and every complicated layer of a story that does not resolve into the simple tribute that the affection of millions of people would prefer, is the actual news that Jan Pol is breaking right now at 83. Not the cancellation, not the proceedings, not the rumors, the news that a man who found his calling at 12 years old and pursued it without deviation for 7 decades is still pursuing it, still seeing patients, still building things, still showing up for the animals and the farmers and the community that needed him long before the cameras arrived and will continue to need him long after the last discussion of the wrong reasons has concluded. That is the news. The wrong reasons are the frame. The actual story is the man inside the frame who has been doing the same work in the same place for the same reasons since before most of the people writing about the wrong reasons were born. His glass is always half full. He has said that more than once. He has had more reason than most people who have ever said those words to know exactly what they cost.